Welcome to the Happiness and Success After Illinois Tech podcast with the Illinois Tech alumni. We're so happy you're here, and we can't wait for you to be inspired from all these real-life stories of people that attended Illinois Tech, graduated, and found success. No matter your major, your background, or where you're from, success and happiness are possible, and here are the stories to prove it. Welcome to this episode, everyone. My guest this week is Jake Bruns, and Jake graduated from Illinois Tech in 2019 with a Bachelor of Science in Material Science and Engineering, right, Jake?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And let's talk about what you thought you wanted to do when you went to Illinois Tech. Did it change when you got there? And were you like, this is what I want to study? And then you finished. How did it work for you?
Not the typical way. I went there and I was just undecided engineering, which Viggs described really well. I remember I watched that one already. So basically I took the first 2 years and just took basic engineering courses to try to decide if I liked it or not. And even up until junior year, I wasn't really sure. And I debated sophomore year about switching to astrophysics or a different type of engineering. But you know, after 3 years, it was pretty much, I could have changed. It would have been a little difficult, but I ended up liking it. And there's enough shared courses within the MMAE program there that you can kind of get a job in any of those once you graduate with a degree. So I definitely didn't know, and it was definitely difficult trying to decide.
How did you pick? So you did the 2 years engineering. You're like, which one do I want to pick? How did you go with material science? I just want the thought process just so students can know, like, what did you go towards? You're like, I gotta pick something. Let me just try this. And then how did you decide on that one?
I just thought it sounded cool. And it wasn't typical mechanical or aerospace, which is pretty common, I think, for most students. It's probably one of the more popular engineering. So I wanted to do something different. And it's a little more sciencey too. It's not exactly practical like mechanical is. So it has more of a research to it too. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, I knew I wanted to be in the MMAE field. And then I just kind of fell into place from there.
That's so cool. I didn't know that. We hadn't talked about that before. I remember you picking it. I just want to share a funny story about between sophomore and junior year, and you had your internship, I think it was at Calamos, and you were there for the summer, and you said, I think I'm going to try to build a 3D printer. I'm just going to order all the parts and I'm going to build one. And I remember thinking, you are? Like, how are you going to do that? How do you know how to do that, number one? And I was skeptical, but I didn't tell you that. I was like, all right, cool. And then it came in a box. Do you remember it came in this box with, I mean, you could have shaken up the parts and thrown them in the garbage. It looked like, right? It looked like,
yeah, like 1,000 parts. Yeah.
And also I remember there were no instructions. And I remember thinking, how are you going to do that? And you know, I remember what you did, of course, what every other kid your age probably did. You looked it up on YouTube and said, I'm just going to go to get the instructions here. And I was like, I could not believe it. And then you came home every day after that summer and worked on it. And your dad helped a little bit. And sure enough, you freaking set that goal. And when the summer was over, you had a 3D printer. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. Yeah. I forget about that. That was kind of the thing that kind of kickstarted, made me curious and things like that. It was and I recommend everyone to do that too. And I had friends that had bought that same printer and classmates that encouraged me to do it. So I was like, you know what, I should do it. And I do the same thing for other people who are curious and want to learn something new. It's a great kit to buy to learn about a ton of different things in engineering. And it's also just a cool project to have. You put on your resume, obviously, and
I didn't even know that. You put on your resume?
Yeah, and they don't teach that. And I mean, they teach you about 3D printing, but they don't have you put one together and figure out how it works. So it's a lot of everything you learn to make that, electronics and mechanical things. And so it's a really good project.
That was crazy. I could not believe it. And then even the icing on the cake was, okay, here it is. It works. And then you're like, I'm going to make something. I'm like, how are you going to make something with this goofy looking. It doesn't look like a printer, because I think in people's minds you would see this box and it would be a printer and paper come out of it. It doesn't look like that. You're printing something that's three-dimensional. And to be able to start, I remember you made this like cup holder and a little coaster thing, and I was like, I can't believe that thing makes these. It was just so bizarre and so cool.
Yeah, I didn't even know what a 3D printer was basically 3 months before that. And I remember in class, I was like, what do you mean you print it in 3 dimensions? I'm like, I just couldn't even picture it, which I'm assuming most people can,
Right.
until they see it. And I was picturing some 2D printer that uses paper, and it just didn't make any sense. And then even after I built it, it still was confusing. I'm like, yeah, it's like building it's the first 50%, and then you can actually print stuff with it. And that's the cool part, obviously, but it's
So cool.
amazing.
It's so cool. And then I remember you saying all of the cool things you could do with it. You're like, do you know you can print prosthetics, and you can help people get things that they need to be healthier and heal or whatever. And I was like, this is just, it was blowing my mind. It still blows my mind when I go into Kaplan and I see all the stuff that the students are making. It just blows my mind that all of what's possible with that simple concept, 3D printing.
Yeah, and that was 5 or 6 years ago too. Now people are, like you said, printing prosthetics and food and all sorts of stuff. I mean, and printing things out of metal, not even plastic, for industry things and stuff like that. So it's really taken off.
It's crazy, crazy. So how did you, when you got so let's talk about so you're at school, you're finishing your degree, when you got your first job, and that second internship was in more like 3D printing. How did you go about getting that internship? And then eventually your job, did you use LinkedIn, Handshake? Like, what was your process? Or
Yeah, so the first engineering job I would say would be QuesTech. That was after my junior year. And IIT has a lot of ties to QuesTech. And I basically reached out to one of my professors and I said, do you know anybody that's hiring for internship programs or anything really, just any leads? And he knows, I'm not sure exactly who he knew, but he put me in touch with him, and they sent me the link for the internship, and I applied, and I'm sure, he threw in a word for me, and I ended up getting it for the summer. And that was more of a traditional material science job, where we were doing metallurgy things and using microscopes and studying SEM, so scanning electron microscopes and stuff like that. So that was really, really cool. And then after that, again, that kind of made me more curious about other things too. So, and that kind of taught me the power of knowing somebody and reaching out and using your network, which I know I've heard a lot of people talk about, but it's really true. And to not burn any bridges, and to be nice to everyone, and you never know who's going to be able to help you later on.
such a great lesson.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's a great lesson. And I want to point out too, that you asked that professor, and if you were one of those students who didn't really show up to class, or went to class once in a while, took an exam, didn't ask any questions, didn't participate, had a kind of bad attitude, that professor wouldn't have done you that favor. So I want to call that out to students, because a lot of them will ask us, the career coaches, like, I know it's your network. I don't know a lot of people. And so I tell them almost every job I've ever gotten was on my own, without someone in my network. But so yes, it's important to have a network, but it's really like the people close to you. How are you treating them, like you said, and how are you approaching them, and what kind of person are you? All of those things come into play. It's not just, did you know that person? It's, how are you treating people? Because all it takes is one person to refer you for a job. All it takes is one person to say, like, please send them forward on this. And now you have that job that you want. But I think students think, if I don't have a really big network, I'm not going to get to ask a lot of people. It's only going to take one, but people are not going to go out of their way for you if you aren't treating them well and acting like a good person. So that's why he did that for you. That was not an accident.
Yeah. And you don't need to know a lot of people, obviously. Like, you don't need to be an extrovert. You can just be good in class and be good in your labs and with your classmates, and you need one professor to take a chance, basically. So it's not like you need to go extremely out of your comfort zone. Like, maybe you have a couple extra conversations that you normally wouldn't, but it's well worth it once you get a recommendation and you can get a job.
I like that concept too. You're right, because there's so many students that are like, I'm shy, I'm introverted, I'm not comfortable having conversations like that. You're right. It only takes a couple, and it really doesn't, they don't have to even be that long. It's just a quick conversation. Or I was telling a student the other day, just talk to your classmate that's really good at this, share your expertise. I think I told you the same advice, and then see how you can help them, and then maybe they will help you. But it's often, it's just those little things. It doesn't take much, and it pays off in big dividends for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, it's every day you have to be hopefully yourself, and yourself as being nice, and yeah. So it's a build up. You can't just do nothing and then ask at the end of the semester if somebody could put in a word for you. It's got to be every day. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember telling you that, and I tell your younger brother the same thing. Like, start off on a high note, which is just you're doing all the right things in class, and it's going to make a difference if you're on the fence, if you're on the borderline of a grade, if you're on if there's a doubt about anything, you don't have to worry about it because you've already built all your character up, and now it's not a question of it.
Yeah,
it goes so far. Okay, is there anything? So now you have this job you have, and you're learning all this cool stuff. Is it what you expected? And is it like, in the world that you're in now, is like, wow, you really are seeing all the things that's possible to apply your knowledge to? And is it like, you're glad you picked what you picked, and there's so many opportunities? How is it?
Yeah, I'm definitely grateful for my job. I think I lucked out for sure. In terms of, I think it's a really good place to have a first job because you get to learn about a lot of different things. It's a research and development company called Concept Group. But it's not like your typical big company where you go to like Northrop Grumman and you're stuck doing the same computer simulation for a whole year. The place I work at, you get a mix of mechanical engineering, electronic engineering, materials engineering. So it was definitely a great place to start. I work with a lot of great people, and I have learned, I can't even describe how much I've learned in the last 3.5 years or 4 years that I've been there. So I couldn't ask for anything more. I don't really have a reference, it's my first job, so I don't know about other jobs, but from what I've heard from other people, it's a great place to work, and research and development can be really rewarding. Also takes a while too.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, because I remember when you were searching, you're like, Northrop Grumman was like your coup de grace. You're like, I'd love to work there and say I worked there. They are doing a lot of cool things, right? But you would have opportunity probably a lot later, but in the beginning, you would have probably been doing one thing that they hired you to do, and you wouldn't have been learning as much as you are at this job.
Yeah. And of course, like, you can, obviously it's what you make it. I've learned a lot because I'm just curious, and I look things up after work and during work. That's not a part of the job description, but that usually comes back well to you if you're doing your job and then you're doing extra, and people see that. That's obviously a good thing. Plus, you're learning. So if you can increase your value to your employer, then they're going to give it back to you. So just because you do something outside of work doesn't mean it can't be useful for inside of work.
I love that. But I want to just kind of just go back to the thing you said about luck. And I tell other students the same thing. You didn't get lucky, Jake. You worked hard. You wanted something and went for it, and really applied yourself when you were looking for jobs. I remember you did it for months. You were determined to get something that you wanted in a climate that you wanted, and you didn't settle. And that's not luck. That's determination and focus and hard work and doing the right thing. So there's always a teeny bit of luck, but it's like luck favors the prepared, I think is the saying. You wouldn't have had any of that had you not done all the right things leading up to it. So I want to congratulate you on that and say that to all other students. It's like luck is like winning a lottery ticket. That's luck. Getting a great job, you had to work your butt off to get that degree, and then work your butt off to find that opportunity.
Yeah, and it always feels like one decision at the end, because it is, obviously I decided to take it, but it just feels like luck in the moment because you forget about everything you did prior to that.
Yes.
You get it, you're like, oh, well, I just decided to take it, but it's like, no, yeah, I worked for 6 months talking to hiring managers and people looking at my resume, and looking back, I really can't believe how much I did and how much it took to just get a couple job offers. Some people are lucky and they do get it after one conversation, or they go to a job fair and get it like that, but it can take a while.
Yeah, you started, it probably took you about 6 months, so you were actively looking, maybe, would you say?
Yeah, January 2019, and then I think April is when I got it.
So 4 months feels long to you. It's not really long in the corporate world, but yeah, I could see, because you were itching. You're like, your graduation is pending. But I tell the students now, it could be right before, it could be right after, but start earlier. And their biggest thing is, well, I don't have any experience. I just have this internship. I'm like, you're not supposed to have any. You went to college. You're in college. You're supposed to. The whole point is to graduate and then go get a job. It's okay that you don't have a ton of experience. They don't expect you to. It's the whole point. Yeah.
And I think they're changing that, because before they would say on job applications for entry level to have like 1 or 3 years of experience, and it's like, well, where am I getting that from? It's entry level. So, but I think that's changing. I think people and companies are getting on board with the fact that people from college aren't going to have any experience, because
it's unrealistic. And the internship is obviously great, but not everyone's going to be able to get that either. But I say to the students, like, you had the degree, you learned everything you were supposed to learn to go do that job. Now it's like teachers. You get a degree, you get the certification, you take the test. Now you are allowed to be a teacher. That's how it works. You studied. Is there anything you wish you'd learned sooner, considering your education or your career? Beginning of it, anyways.
I think I wish I would have probably done that 3D printer project earlier. I wish I would have been more curious earlier, because I feel like I maybe only got like 1.5 years worth of really good, I guess, applying myself. I cared, but I wasn't curious. I cared about getting good grades for the sake of getting good grades, and having a job and that whole thing. But once I started to become curious, that's when I started to enjoy it and really took it and ran with it. So I wish I would have kind of I don't really know if you can force that though. I think it just kind of comes as you start applying yourself. But I think it would have been useful if I could have at least had a little bit more experience. I don't know what the right word is. Like
applying what you learned.
I wish I would have known some of the things I knew junior year, freshman year. So I could have been 2 years ahead of the game. So rather than really starting to apply myself and learn things and see what's useful junior year, I would have that freshman year. And that's how I felt some of my friends were. They had started their projects freshman year. So by the time I met them junior year, they were already doing stuff that was 2 times as cool as what I was doing.
They seemed ahead of you because they were. So you would say to the freshman kids or students, go talk to those upperclassmen and see what they're doing and what they're working on, and start earlier.
And don't sit and do nothing, right? Like, you have this degree that you're going towards. Either figure out you hate it or figure out you like it, but don't do nothing.
Good advice. Don't do nothing. I love that. It's smart. Okay, final question for you. What's the best advice you could offer someone a college student graduating and looking for a job, or looking to like get a great job, or even the ones that like finish and go, I don't know what I want to do now? What would you say to them?
Send out as many emails as possible and have as many conversations as possible. And I think if you do that and you're nice to people and you do something every day for a couple hours or even a half hour, and you drive to your interviews and you just get as much interviewing experience and in talking to people experience as much as you can, then you will have a good success rate just on sheer numbers.
You're right.
And you can obviously tailor it to an industry you want to be in, but I think college students should be more listeners and just be taking in as much information as possible. That way, because everyone who you're talking to has more experience from you, literally everyone.
Yeah.
So,
right.
So
absorb it.
Yeah.
Absorb it. It's great advice. And I tell the students now too, the ones that they're comparing themselves to everyone else. And I know that we talked a little bit about that because you wanted to get more experiences. So you were asking questions, you were being curious, but I tell them, if everyone around you is saying you have to do this, you have to do that, that's not necessarily the case for you. And just because it worked for them doesn't mean it's going to work for you, or vice versa. You have different skills and you have better skills. And so you can go ahead and do this thing that they tried and didn't work for them. So I always just tell them there's so many other factors and variables to consider. And if there's people around you saying you can't, or I don't know how, or whatever, go to someone else, right? Go to another professor, go to an upperclassman who's done it already, go to someone in the industry, or network with someone who's doing what you love. There's other people out there that are proving it's possible, which is why we're doing this podcast. And it's not necessarily your peers sitting next to you in a classroom. Like you said, everyone else knows more than you guys, right? Go to them.
Yeah. And I think people naturally want to talk about themselves and how many, accolades and accomplishments they have. So if you go into a conversation and you just ask them about something they've worked on, odds are that they're passionate. Odds are they want to they want to tell somebody else, whether they want you to learn or they just want to brag, doesn't really matter, because they're telling you. But hopefully they're doing it because they want to teach somebody else because somebody taught them. And that's how I feel. And I think that's powerful. If you just go and ask them about projects you've done, and the odds that you strike up a good, passionate conversation are pretty high. Or in a very worst, you're learning what you don't want to be like, or what you don't want to study, or something like that.
I love that. That's a great piece of advice. And I was talking to students about this the other day. Like, all you have to do is kind of like dating. You get them to talk about themselves, and they leave the conversation like, that was so great. And you're like, I didn't even say anything, because all they did was talk about themselves the whole time, because they like talking about themselves, and it was easy. And then they feel good when they leave your presence and that interaction with you. So it's an easy trick. And yeah, all you have to do to get people talking is say like, what are you working on? Or tell me about what you've learned, or what have you achieved? It's like, boom, it's gold.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a fun conversation. I've learned some new things about you that I didn't know. So that's fun. So people want to connect with you. What's the best way to, if they want to connect or ask questions, or?
Email or LinkedIn. Yeah, I mean, email is probably best. I have access to my Hawk email, but that's not my preference. I can give the email if you want, or
yeah, sure.
Yeah, right now.
If you'd like to.
Oh yeah, Jake .m.bruns@gmail.com.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's the one I check most frequently. So
excellent. Well, I know people are going to learn something from you, and I did today, and I know I've known you for a long time, and I still learned something new. So it's a great example. You are a great example of what's possible after Illinois Tech, and it's such an awesome school, and you have this great job and great experiences because you were there and you took advantage of it. And even though you say you wish you would have taken advantage of it a little bit sooner, you did, which is why you're in the spot that you are now. So it's never too late to start taking advantage of it. I think you're going to have more opportunities the earlier you do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And IIT is a great school, and this is an awesome idea for a podcast, and I'm glad you're doing it, because it would have been cool to watch these when I was a freshman. So this is perfect.
It's awesome. Yeah. More examples of people doing it, no matter what your major is. There's all kinds of majors we have. It's engineering, it's architecture, there's business, etc. So there'll be a lot of examples. And yes, it's just a great way to see what's possible and start to think about things, because you're in that mind, being in a different mindset when you get into school, instead of just like, okay, I'm just going to take classes and not think about anything else till I graduate. That's not how that's not going to help you be successful.
Yeah. This is going to be a huge help.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know I did.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jake.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Check out the Illinois Tech Connect platform. It's the official networking site for Illinois Tech alumni. It's operated by Illinois Institute of Technology Alumni Association with help from Career Services. The aim of the platform is to connect our entire alumni community to provide a space for communication, networking, and other opportunities. Also, join the Illinois Tech Career Services group on LinkedIn and learn about all things career-related. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Finally, as an alum, whenever you need career guidance or advice, you're always welcome to connect to the Career Services Department, make an appointment with a career coach, and take advantage of this lifelong resource available to all alumni. We can't wait to help you, and more importantly, we can't wait to see what you do.